Greetings, and welcome to the final presentation of Team Finder brought to you by Team Alpha. Our main topics today are going to be project concept, software architecture, software components, and strategy design patterns. So, without further ado, prepare yourself to be immersed into the future of gaming.
What is matchmaking and why is it important to us? Matchmaking is a tool used to find other players based on skill level, but currently it's lacking the core idea of looking for other players with the same interest and playstyle as you. Say that you prefer a defensive playstyle, but you're paired up with a group of people that prefer offensive playstyle. Our solution is to make sure that the matchmaking system can be based upon the skill level and the user's preference.
Hey everyone, so for our software architecture, we decided to go with a layered architecture. This software architecture is divided in four parts: the user interface layer, the application layer, domain layer, and infrastructure layer. These four layers are highly decoupled by an auto-wire feature that Spring Boot has. That's the framework that we're using for Java. And I just want to quickly explain each of the parts that we see on the screen. So for the registration controller, that's the controller that actually deals with the player service, that the player service creates registers a player to save it as a persistent entity in the player repository. For the player, when the registration part is done, he could log in inside the app again, and it would still have the information of the player. For the post controller, we're using the post service to create post, and it's a persistent entity, so it has a repository too. It's saved on the database. These posts are really decoupled from the player because it only saves the email for the player, so it's only connected by the email. That's why it doesn't have a direct connection to the player entity. For the match controller, it's connected to two services, the team service and the matchmaking service. For the team service, it actually creates the teams and it saves it out as a persistent entity. That's why it's connected to a team repository. And it also adds the player to a certain team that the player wants to join when the player is accepted by the team owner. The other service that is connected to the match controller is the matchmaking service. This service it's connected to the match entity. The match entity is an entity that it functions as a filter. So when the player wants to look for a team in the matchmaking service, match is used as a filter to look for a list of posts that have teams that are desired to the player, that have the specific definitions, and if the player wants to play with someone that's not playing for just for fun, it's playing on a professional level, he could specify that in the match entity. That's why the match it doesn't have a repository, because it's actually functioning as a filter in this case. So as we can see also in the application layer for the matchmaking service, the matchmaking service is actually an interface. So the ones that implements the functions in that interface is the solo matchmaking service and the group matchmaking service. This is because we're using the strategy pattern explained in the class. So Grace is going to explain that later on. And those are the concrete classes for that matchmaking service interface.
Good afternoon, I'm Luis Colomba, and I'll be presenting the user registration and user activation, or better said, how the application deals with these functions. For the user registration, when the player registers their account or inputs their information for the new account, the application generates a user ID and an activation token at the same time for that information, links the token to the user ID, so that when you send the verification using SMS to the email to the user, we go over here, and once that user clicks that verification link, the application will know, thanks to the link that we did over here, it will know to activate that user, and then we can go back over here and the application can then store that data into our database.
Hello, my name is Grace and I will be presenting the strategy design pattern in the matchmaking service. Because matchmaking had two different algorithms here, we decided to use a strategy pattern to implement the code separately and not create a monolithic class service that makes the class long and difficult to make changes. For that reason, we created a matchmaking service interface here that returns a list post. And this interface is implemented by solo matchmaking service and the group matchmaking service to accommodate when the player is in the party or alone and wants to search for a team. Here we have the match class that serves as a filter, one that helps the player to fulfill their needs.
Because it creates different combination of age range, game name, game style, game type, match type, rank level that satisfies the search engine of each player.
These diagrams were made using the AutoWar feature that Spring Boot offers. We made so it changed service on a runtime depending on the state of the player. Thank you for watching.